All right, so this concludes the assembly of the Sintratec kit. I worked on it for about 3 days and then spent about a half day calibrating it. It's essentially done according to the instructions, but I still haven't printed anything with it yet. I'm basically going to do some quick test prints and see how it works. According to my advisors on this from 3D Chimera, they say that everything should be good to go. There were a few dark spots on the perimeter of the pattern, but aside from that, everything looks like it's ready to print, so I'm good to go there. Now the Sintratec kit comes with a bunch of tools, and 3D Chimera, who provided the kit to me, they're the US distributor, they also provided a few extra tools to make it a little easier, and everything that was sent was actually really useful. But in addition to that, I used everything here to make this thing as well. So I wanted to go through all of the extra items that I used. Well, the most important thing for this was an electric power drill. 3D Chimera gives you a 4mm hex bit, which is 1,000 times better than trying to tap all those extrusions just with your hands. I did about 2 of them, and I went through all of the stuff beforehand, and I remembered that there was a hex bit in there, but as I was doing about 2 of the extrusions, I said, F this, I am not going to sit there and like hand tap 100 extrusions. I don't even know how many there were. Might even be 100 of them. So I got my drill out and started drilling it, and later on I had seen that they recommend that you drill them all. So there's that. You need a power drill to make this thing a much quicker project. The next thing is get a bunch of gloves, latex gloves, any sort of like rubber style gloves, because there's a bunch of things that you don't want to be touching with your bare hands. The infrared glass, the infrared bulbs, the glass for the laser, the lenses for the laser, everything should be handled with very clean gloves. You want to change them out as much as possible. Another thing is, now they give you this little file here for filing out portions of the metal. Sometimes there's burrs and stuff on them that you need to be cleaned off, but I have a higher quality needle file set, and there were lots of these that I used, like the cylindrical one was able to get into those little holes and really make the project a lot faster, like a higher quality file set. So get a better file set. Then tape. You can't use the tape pretty much anywhere in the heated elements of the thing. So you don't want to use any tape that could catch on fire or smolder or smell bad. However, sometimes it's good to use tape for like bundling wires when you're pulling it through, or to label things quickly so you know what's what. And so I use tape quite a bit to sort of just make the project faster. Another thing is to get a mat. Like this mat really came in handy. I didn't use this in the beginning. I was just sort of working on newspaper and this paper on the table here when I really should have been using a mat. The benefits of the mat is you don't have rubber stoppers on this thing while you're working on it, and there's very sharp edges. This is all made out of aluminum extrusions, so it could damage your work surface. There's lots of little tears on here because I would just graze the table and it would just scuff everything up. So a mat makes that a lot easier, and also the mat makes cutting the felt and really any of the other non-metal assemblies just a lot easier. You have something to work on. And then lastly, when you were tapping the extrusions, all the little metal shavings would fall onto the table, and for a long time I was vacuuming them up. It took a lot of time. So instead, just drill them out on the mat and then go brush your mat off into the trash. It's a lot faster than trying to dig out the vacuum cleaner. Next, I got a bunch of metric bolts. I keep old bolts and stuff, and for this thing I actually ended up using quite a bit. It does come with a lot of extra hardware. However, on this particular one, I was short something like 7 number 10 nuts, and there was a few other pieces, so luckily I had enough just in my own little stock to resolve any missing nuts that were there. So if you have any metric stuff, any metric bolts, make sure to keep them handy just in case you're short a nut or two. You don't want to be waiting a day to go to the hardware store to get a little nut. It would just eat up a lot of your time. The next thing is dental picks. Just great for fishing those little snaps out in case you put one in the wrong spot. You can you hold it down and you can just pull it out. Like this one is actually really nice because you have a straight one and then you have this little curly-cued one. The straight one can hold it down and the other one can pry it out pretty quickly. Another thing is a straight dental pick works great for putting the washers in the side and then, aligning your stuff. There's a lot of aligning, so having dental picks just makes everything 1,000 times easier. Writing utensils. I had a pencil for marking a lot of the metal components and then adjusting them. And then markers, permanent markers for marking like the steppers and a couple other things. So I didn't want it to be mislabeled. And then also a regular marker for marking the felt when you're finding the holes in your felt for the platforms or for any other part that needs felt. This marker really came in handy. Super sharp scissors. You're cutting felt, you're cutting insulation, you're just cutting a lot of stuff, and a good shears is just great. They do give you a razor blade, or a couple razor blades, and that's really handy, but sometimes the scissors just makes it faster and easier. A good straight edge that has metric. This is made in Switzerland or something, so everything's in metric. For a little while I was doing the math to convert everything in inches and stuff, but eventually I just dug out my metric straight edge and just made things a lot faster. There's a lot of extrusions that you line up and then they say to go offset by 147 millimeters. Just rather than doing the math, just get yourself a metric ruler. And then there's socket set. Metric socket set would be nice. I didn't really use it that much for this machine. However, I did use it for the vacuum assembly. So like there's a vacuum unit that gets built with this thing, and I used my socket set for that. But if you wanted to hold the nuts and then use the socket, that would be a way to do it. Otherwise, another way to hold the nuts is to get yourself a vice grips. This is really what I used for the majority of the project because there's a lot of different size nuts, and trying to find the sockets would be a hassle, so you just crimp this on and then you just tighten it down with the Allen wrench. I'd say this is probably the more important tool. Also, I did use a needle nose pliers for a little while. Eventually, I stuck with the vice grips because it's just easier, but the needle nose sometimes was good for putting in wires and stuff, just if you have stumpy little hands. Another thing is alcohol wipes. Sometimes you need to clean up the surfaces. They have glue, or sometimes that sticky paper gets put on something like on extrusion, and it's just a pain. Rather than having a sticky spot in here that would warm up and probably melt or burn, it's easier just to wipe it off with an alcohol wipe, and then you don't have to deal with like a bottle and some paper towels. You just wipe it down with this thing and then move on, just to make things quicker. I also use paper towels as well. It's not in this thing. So also get yourself a good wire cutters and strippers, because there's some wire cutting that needs to be done. So this makes it a lot easier. You don't have to cut the wire, but it would make the top quite messy to have an excess of 3 feet or something of wire from the infrared lights or from whatever else. So good wire cutters and a good wire strippers. 10 millimeter open-ended wrench, crucial for adjusting the eccentric bearings. I was trying to do this thing with just a pliers. It's not worth it. Just get yourself a good 10 millimeter, and it's just easy. You can just twist it and turn it until you feel it getting tight, and you find that middle and you tighten it down. It's 1,000 times easier than trying to use a pliers. A couple different screwdrivers. On the larger power supply, you need a flathead, larger screwdriver. Also, I have a couple smaller Phillips and flathead screwdrivers that deal with like the adjustment on the galvo circuit boards. And then this one I think was for the smaller power supply. Another thing that most people wouldn't have, but I think is really handy, was a feeler gauge set. If you have them, it's great. You don't have to go out of your way to get one to build this thing. It just saves time because I don't have a small level, and it really doesn't matter anyway if you have a level to try to level there's a fin along the bottom of that track, and it's easier just to use a set of feeler gauges. That way you can adjust it to whatever, like a tenth of a millimeter or a half of a millimeter, whatever you want it to be. Put the feeler gauges in and then adjust it, and then you get a solid placement. So these are all the additional tools that I use to build this thing. It probably saved me several hours, maybe even a full day, because they do say it takes 4 days to build. And by having everything ready, I probably could have done it even faster. There's a lot of things like the mat and the 10 millimeter wrench and just a bunch of stuff that I worked with just with their tools or just with what I thought was necessary. And then as I progressed, I realized, it's easier if I just went out to the garage and got all my stuff. So if I had this ready, I may even been able to finish it even faster. But overall, it wasn't that difficult of a build. It was pretty nice. It had a lot of different things. It was a couple more things that I used to make this project a lot faster. Flashlight. I'm sure everybody has a flashlight, but this one's really nice because it's got these little legs, and the item has a lot of little nooks and crannies, so it's good to have something that you can prop up and then adjust the light accordingly, because you don't want to be like sitting there holding a flashlight and also trying to do all that stuff. So get yourself a flashlight you can adjust, or get a headlamp, just something more useful than that. Another thing is a heat gun. I was doing the heat shrink on the plug. Sintratec does recommend using electrical tape, but it's really a hassle to get it in and out of there, and also electrical tape leaves this goo on there if you ever have to adjust it. So heat gun with heat shrink that's provided by 3D Camera really made the project easy. Another thing is a mirror. It's kind of hard to see up into the laser from the bottom part of the oven here. So it's just easier just to hold the mirror and then look up, and then that way you can align the little blinks on your IRs and stuff. It's a lot easier to use a mirror. So get yourself a good mirror, and something like this was actually quite nice, a big one, because one of those little mirrors, I have those little automotive mirrors, didn't really capture the entire pathway, but a big mirror allowed me to look straight in, look straight up, make sure that it's all good. Another thing I used was a cell phone, and I use it for a lot of stuff. I think it was pretty clever, if I do say so myself. So one thing is, I used a flashlight option, and these things are really bright, and they're really small. And the benefit of that is, if you want to calibrate the laser, it was a lot of work. I spent a long time sort of going back and forth calibrating the laser, trying to get it to go through both prisms and then hit the Y galvo and the X galvo mirrors. And on top of that, it has to go down into the bed and then match the pattern while also going through this lens that's in between all this stuff. And I spent a long time, and I never really got it. I couldn't really see it. When you're wearing the glasses, you don't see the laser beam, so you can't really see it. It's really hard to see. I turned off all the lights, couldn't really tell. So I did the opposite. I just turned on my light, this thing, and I laid it on the bed right at the crisscross of the pattern that Sintratec gives you. Well, here, it's right here. So I basically turned on this light and then laid it right at the crisscross of that pattern in the bed. So it's just laying there like this. And then the light shined up through the laser hole. It hit the first galvo, and then it hit the next galvo, and it went this way. But it was off somewhere. It went through the lens. And then I could see it on the wall. So then I just adjusted the galvos until they shined directly into the prisms that went right into the laser. And right after that, then it was real easy. You just fine-tuned the laser beam that was down on their pattern. But at least this got you 95% of the way there, a lot faster than trying to tweak the galvos. And you're like, I can't really see the laser. That was a huge waste of time. Just take like a bright cell phone light or any sort of spotlight, but I don't know, I don't really have a light that's this small anywhere else. So maybe cell phone light's the only real light to do that. Another reason why this came in really handy is you have laser glasses that block the laser beam. You can't see the laser beam. If you take off the glasses, you damage your eyes. However, if you put on your glasses and you turn on your video and then look through the phone, you can see the laser really well. In fact, it's a little too sensitive. So if you want to do some crude adjustments, you can always just put your glasses on and then just look through your phone as you're adjusting it, and it helps you see it. However, you need to sort of fine-tune the intensity. You want to bring the brightness way down because the laser is just, it refracts off of everything, refracts, and when you first look at it, it just looks like a glowing light show. You know, it's just crazy. So you can use this thing as sort of like a makeshift augmented reality, and it will help you out as well. I'm sure any sort of video-backed camera would do it. I wouldn't use something really expensive just in case the laser damages your lenses, but I doubt that would happen. What else is there? Is there anything else? I can't think of anything else, but this is a really good list of stuff. If you have these things in the house and you're getting ready to build this thing, put this stuff off to the side. I guarantee you'll use it. You know, the tools they give you are useful. I use the Allen wrenches more than anything else, hence the reason why they provide Allen wrenches. And also they provided a screwdriver that was extremely handy. They have like a tiny screwdriver that's somewhere in between like super small and like normal size, and that screwdriver basically was used for all kinds of stuff. You know, holding washers on, threading in parts of the circuit board. You know, there's like a bunch of things that screwdriver and that Allen wrench set was used for. Kind of a fun project. And yeah, sometimes it got a little tough. Sometimes the instructions weren't that clear, and to 3D Chimera's credit, their additional notes truly made the project a lot easier, because basically every other page in the Sintratec Kit instruction manual was like completely confusing, and their page next to it had slightly more annotated information. Sometimes they even had pictures, and it just solved it. Like their instructions even had wiring pictures, so you knew kind of how to best wire it. You know, that's crucial stuff, because you don't want to end up routing it one way and then realize that it doesn't reach the circuit board. So everything that they had provided was extremely useful, and I totally recommend it. I can't think of anything else. I think this is it. So I'm going to fire it up, see what happens. Hopefully I don't blow a transformer or burn down my house.